All right, good evening. I'm going to test a little bit here to make sure that all of our technology is working and up to speed. And I'd like to just say welcome to all of you that are here this evening. Again, my name is Mark Holzman. I'm superintendent of the Manitowoc Public School District to share with you some information regarding our presentation tonight. So we will get started real quickly. Just want to check to make sure that all things are working on our streaming devices. So the presentation that I have for you tonight should take maybe 12, 14 minutes. I'm going to go through a number of slides, share with you four basic facts that I want all of our public to kind of be aware of when we're working through the presentation. The first is that I want you to know how much it's costs. I want you to know that what it's going to go for, specifically our debt and how that affects the public schools, and then what happens if it doesn't pass. So through the presentation, I'm going to share with you um, some slides and some information. During the presentation, if you have any questions that you would like me to answer, I will do my best to answer those throughout the presentation when I'm finished. I'm only in the screen that shows the presentation right now, and I can't see the chat, but I do have some help here that will be able to answer some questions as we move forward. So with that, I'd just like to start again by thanking you for your time and being with us here tonight. This is the second of three communications that we'll have opportunities for our public and our continue to provide information. If at any time you need some more information, please feel free to give me a call. So the first question is, what are we seeking? And we're asking for a $4.3 million to maintain our existing programs, fund capital projects and technology needs, and retain our quality staff. We currently are on the last of 3 years of a $3.5 million referendum. So back in 2018, we asked our public to consider offering us some additional funds to maintain. We did that. We're asking for an additional $800,000 from that 3.5. Again, we'll talk about the increased costs. We're looking at that supporting all schools, all students with little or no tax impact. We do know that the main portion of what we try to do is support kids. We have about 5,000 students in the Manitowoc Public School District. We have about 800 employees, and it's our job to be able to try to provide the best possible learning experience for all kids. In order for us to do that, we need operating referendum dollars to maintain our current programs. And we'll talk a little bit about the details of that. But again, when we think about the opportunities that exist in Manitowoc Public School District, I like to say that we are large enough to provide all kinds of programs, yet small enough to be personal. And we see that with our 21st century workforce development skills that we're providing, our class sizes that we want to protect. We need to continue to provide great staff training and development. We want to have competitive wages and benefits, maintain those capital improvements on those beautiful buildings that we have, and continue to maintain that hardware and software that we're so reliant on with our technology needs today. We do know that the state does provide operating costs for districts, but what we know is that back in 1994, the state of Wisconsin put revenue limits on all of the public school districts. And what happens with revenue limits is that it froze every school district spending and time. And so when we are looking at the increases that the state provides us, we don't see significant increases to our per pupil allocation. What the state has done is it's froze us in time. They've said every school district is going to be at that level since 1994, and a Manitowoc Public School District gets a same amount of money, regardless of our per pupil spending, as every other school district in the state. The example I would give you is this. Typically, we see a per pupil allocation. So Manitowoc might receive a $100 increase per pupil. And that would mean that we'd take the $100 times the 5,000 pupils, and we would see that Manitowoc would have $500,000. Now, we understand that that's a significant amount of money. If I was in maybe Reedsville, I might have 550 kids, and so you would get $50,000. In Manitowoc, we're that much larger. we would have $500,000. The example I would give you, though, is that we also have to continue to provide increased costs based on inflation for capital improvements, for staffing, for insurance, for our utilities. And we know that 1% of our budget, that $80 million, is $800,000. To give you an example, last year we saw the State Fiscal Bureau gave us a 1.23% increase. Basically, what that means is they expected the inflation to be 1.23%. If we're getting $500,000 and 1% is $800,000, you see at the beginning of the year, even with that increased dollars, we're at a $300,000 deficit. So without this operating referendum, we can't continue our current programs or services. We do know that we want to continue to provide that wide variety of opportunities for kids. It's important for us to maintain those options. We know that our kids are our future, and we'll talk a little bit about some resources moving forward. When we talk about the referendum, we say that it has little or no tax impact. The Manitowoc Public School District has the ability to monitor and try to do their best. There's all kinds of factors to keep the net tax levy in place. So the district sets the tax levy, which is the amount of money we receive from our community per $100,000 of equalized value. And so right now, we anticipate that equalized value, $1,000 model that we call it the mill rate, will be $7.80. Currently, it's $7.81, so a 1 cent drop. We know that for the last 6 years since we've been to referendum, we've seen a continued drop into that model, and we do know that we have the lowest net tax levy in our county. And here's an example I can give you. So if a $100,000 value is in Manitowoc, as a resident, you would pay $781 to the taxing entity, whether you live in the city, whether you live in a municipality, you live in Newton, you would pay $781, that per $100,000. If you live in Two Rivers, that same $100,000, you're paying $843 to the public schools. If you live in Kiel, that same $100,000 is $913 to the public schools. And if you live in Reedsville, that same $100,000 is $1,100 to the public schools. Now, the district doesn't have the authority to just raise or lower that based on anything we want. Obviously, if we want to raise the levy, we have to ask the public. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're asking the public for permission. And in this case, we see that it's going to, we think it will lower, basically because we see that there has been a 3% increase in property value over the last 5 years, 5% over the last 3 years. So again, the district only sets the net tax levy rate. Your assessed value and the equalized value is set by either the city or the state. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. The other factor that I want to talk to you about a little bit is our spending. So the Manitowoc Public School District ranks 386 out of 420 according to our DPI rankings. What that means is if we were all doing some kind of a 5K walk or run, 385 people would finish before us in this per pupil spending. We're not asking the public to move us to number 1, number 10, or even number 50. We're just trying to maintain at number 386. It puts us in the bottom 10% of spending. So we know first that our net tax levy is the lowest in the county and likely the lowest in the region. That's a value. You're getting $781 compared to $800 or $900 or even $1,000 to other school districts. We also know that we're spending less, right? We've been a conservative school district for over the years. If we actually spent the average per pupil in Wisconsin, we would see about a $2,000 increase or $9.9 million annually. That's how far we are away from the average. So what we do want to do is say, listen, it's important for us to maintain the current programs. I understand that going back to referendum is something that we've had to do now for the third time, and our current funding formula doesn't give us any other options other than reduce, reduce, reduce. And we've made significant reductions over the last years. We want to continue to maintain that. What we're also seeing is this challenge right here. And what you see on this screen is a difference between the state, which is the red, and the Manitowoc Public School District. In 2008, 2009, we saw this number here being $1,400. And we've seen that it's taken us 10 years to get to the average state funding that it was back in 2008. But this number here has grown, is now $2,000. So we see over 10 years, the difference between the Manitowoc spending per pupil and the state average has grown by $500. Again, a significant factor as we look forward. The other piece of our net tax levy that is new to the district is the effect that private school vouchers have on that. If you look at this slide, you'll see back in 2016, private school vouchers were introduced, and it cost the Manitowoc Public School District levy, not the district, but the levy, about $150,000. So let me back up and explain that a private school voucher is this. Any student who resides in any school district that has a private school who accepts vouchers is eligible to apply for a voucher. So students who live in the Manitowoc Public School District and go to one of the schools, private schools in Manitowoc that applies for a voucher, they're eligible to do that. The voucher is an aid payment of about $8,000. Each student, each parent who applies for the voucher, it's based on the federal poverty limit. So one example I would give you is that the federal poverty limit 2 times is the state, is what we have for free or reduced. And the Manitowoc Public School District has 50% approximately of our students are eligible for free and reduced based on 2 times the poverty limit. The voucher, it goes greater than that. It goes 3 times the poverty limit. So it would include everybody who is free and reduced plus another potentially third. We know that the private school vouchers are something that has increased. So the reason I share this with you is basically to kind of show you the existence over time. So we see that it's gone from $150,000 to $1.972 million. And what that means is that over time, from 2016 to 2021, that levy cost has gone from basically less than 5 cents to 71 cents on our levy. So what we're seeing is our net tax levy is then passed on to the taxpayers in our district. So our levy would likely be 71 cents lower if, in fact, we didn't have to send that money back to those parochial schools. The challenge there is explaining to our public that the money that goes, that $1.9 million, is actually not coming to the district. So if we have a $21 million levy, only 19 of it is actually coming to the district. 2 of it is going somewhere else. But that affects our tax levy. So when you see your tax bill, you'll see the amount of money you're paying. Not all of that money is coming to the Manitowoc Public School District. Just a factor that we want people to understand as we explain the school finance picture and our own picture here in the Manitowoc Public School District. Again, it's important for us to recognize that we have wonderful kids, we have wonderful opportunities, and we want to continue to be able to provide all kinds of resources. We've scrambled over the last year trying to come up with new models of teaching. We're extremely pleased with the opportunity to get back to person learning, but we know we also have a number of families who we're supporting in a virtual model. One of the things that I also want to explain to the public and to you is that we are spending our money in the right places. And so the next slide is going to show this bottom graph in detail. The top basically shows where the Manitowoc spends its money and where the state spends its money in a pie graph. I want to show you that very specifically because the theme here is this. Manitowoc Public School District spends 61% of its dollars on instruction. The state spends 53% on average. So even though we see the state spending more money, they're not spending it in the same place as we are. We're reducing our cost in administration to the 6.6, 1.1% less than the state average. We have actually spent more on instruction. You look at this, $7,000, almost $500 to $7,450. So even though we have limited resources, we've made a commitment to make sure that we're spending it on the right things by reducing our costs in some of the other areas. And we do believe that's the right thing to do. So when we get to the end, we talk about, well, what happens? We have all these details about why we need the money and how it affects the levy. What happens if it fails? Well, we will need to make $4.3 million in budget cuts. And those reductions are going to come from staff, programs, technology, capital improvements. Manitowoc Public School District, along with all other school districts in the state, about 80% of our budget is in salary and benefits. So likely the largest share of our cuts, because it has to be a permanent cut, needs to come from salary and benefits. So what we're looking at is a reduction of 49 full-time staff members, full-time, all employee groups, administrators, teachers, support staff, custodians, food service. That would reduce about 3.4 million. We'd still need to reduce another $900,000 from other projects and other supplies, materials, training, etc., in order to meet that $4.3 million budget. We know that we would see an increase in class size. We know we would see a reduction in student programs, and we also know that we would still see 5,000 students coming back to us, with families expecting their children to have the same opportunities in educational programs that they had when they left in the spring. We do want to provide that. We just need to make sure that that opportunity exists, and we're asking people to consider approving the referendum. We also know that current law prohibits school district from bringing back a referendum for a year. So we would be forced to come back in another year if it failed or not. I mean, it depends on what our board would say. Again, the board voted unanimously to bring this to the public, but it would definitely provide us with a significant blow to our learning, our teaching, and our programming. And we do know that in that system, we want to make sure that we provide opportunities for all of our kids. Here's a quick picture of some kids who learned in their homes, working through what it might be like to work with one of our music instructors. We're pleased that they're back in person, but we do know that we want to continue to provide great programs. So we talk about what we can do. Well, we know we can be informed. We want you to know the facts, want you to talk to people about it, answer questions, and we want you to vote. We will have one more information session on March 24th. I am always available to be able to communicate and try to answer the questions that are in the chat, and I appreciate that with you tonight. What I want you to understand again, as we go through the overall big picture, it's a $4.3 million referendum. We're going to see little or no tax impact on that $4.3 million. We do know that we're one of the lowest spending school districts in the state. Our net tax levy is the lowest in the region and the lowest it's been in 6 years. We know that it will go to all schools, all programs, and continue to provide the supports that we need to maintain our buildings, our programs, and our staffing. And we do know that with absent the referendum vote, we would see a $4.3 million reduction, significant cuts to 50 staff members, and another $900,000 in programming. What I would like to share with you is a couple more quick slides here, just explaining to you that Manitowoc is not the only public school who is going to referendum. We see, if you look at the referendums in April 2020 to April 2021, we see that over 150 school districts in the state of Wisconsin are going back to their public to ask for supports. The Manitowoc Public School District is not alone. We see some of our neighbors who have gone to referendum over the past year or are going to referendum. And we do know that the current funding mechanism does not provide our resources that we need. The two final slides that I have for you talks about Vision 2022. And if you remember, about a year and a half ago, Lead Research was sending out some information, asking for input. And what happened was our public schools asked us to rate the value of the following items. And they said our schools were number one and our youth was number three in terms of the impact to the future of Manitowoc County. In addition to that, we wanted to rate the importance of the quality of life. And what they found was that K-12 education was the number one attribute to the quality of life. We know that public schools support great infrastructure. We know that public schools support our businesses, our kids, and our community. And so what we're doing is we're asking our public to consider an operating referendum that will allow us to maintain our programs, continue to do the things that we've done, continue to provide training development so we can learn new things and improve on what we're doing, and maintain a program and supports that our students and our community can be proud of. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a minute and just take a bit of a breath. I've had some help here adding to some questions. So one of the questions says we should not need a referendum if the revenue cap formula was fixed. If we were shortchanged $8 million every year due to the outdated formula, I would encourage our legislature's rep to address this. So yes, it's a great question. I actually met last Wednesday, Representative Tittle. I met the week before with our senator, and what I would tell you is I meet every month with our local legislatures, and we're continuing to tell them that the current formula does not work. I do know that there was a blue ribbon commission, and maybe all of you know, you can look this up. There's a blue ribbon commission that says specifically, we want to bring a bunch of people together, bipartisan, to make some plans for us to look at how we can absolutely improve our finance model. Unfortunately, as it went forward, the legislator decided not to pass any. In the governor's bill, there's some additional resources to public schools, but right now we don't have a new funding formula, and we're hoping, and I'm continuing to communicate the need for that on a regular basis. And I encourage you, if you have agree with that, to reach out to your legislatures. So the next question was, what is the average classroom size for core classes, and how does this compare to the state? Well, thank you for the question, Tim. I can't give you an idea right off the top of my head what the state's average class size is, but what I can give you is a model of how we determine class sizes. And when we say core classes, you're probably talking about secondary, but I'll give you a K-12 kind of model. We have guidelines, and again, we talk primary, which is K2, intermediate, which is 3-5, and then middle school 6-8, and then 9-12. So to give you an example, there's a formula that we use at Lincoln High School in order to determine the number of sections that Lincoln High School gets. And so in general, what I would say is that formula is based on about a 25-to-1 ratio. There's lots of factors that go with that. And the reason I say there's lots of factors is because on average, students actually take more classes than teachers would teach. So what I mean by that is teachers teach 5 out of 7 periods per day. Kids generally take like 6 point something. So the average class size is a little bit massaged. The other reason I tell you that is because some classes, when we talk about core, might have, we might have a section, let me give you an example. Let's say geometry, probably one of our most popular classes. Let's say we have 7 geometry sections. It's offered every period. Well, first period geometry might have 22, and 7th period geometry might have 17. 4th period geometry might have 28, and 5th period geometry might have 22. Overall, we're trying to have less than 25 kids in our core classes, and sometimes it depends on specifically what hour it is and how we offer that. But in general, that's the model at the secondary level. We'll have again some courses in the elementary. Generally, we try to have a lower class size in our early elementary schools, like I said, K2, than we would in our intermediate, and we really try to manage that. I'm not sure what the state would give you, because the state would ask us to provide you with a class size, which would be the total number of FTE teachers we have divided by the total number of students we have, and that's actually not a real good idea of class size. So I would tell you that on average, most of our classes are less than 25, probably a general. And there are some that might have 28 and 30, and there are plenty that have 17 and 16. And I would say, in my experience overall, our class sizes are very comparable. In some cases, our class size is a little bit smaller. In some cases, I would say they're right on the money. But I'm comfortable with where we use. I've seen the formulas before for secondary, and I'm comfortable with those class sizes. If for comparison, what is the tax levy rate if the referendum does not pass? So another great question. So I would tell you that if our tax levy is $7.80, if the referendum fails, we would probably see that net tax levy go down to about, I would say, $1.25, give or take. Now, what'll happen is it'll go down $1.25 for the first year. And the reason I say for the first year is because the state reimburses school districts based on spending. And the Manitowoc Public School District is what we call a highly aided school district. Highly aided means that the state gives us about 60% and our local taxpayers about 40. It's actually like 62 and 38. The reason I say that is because I would give you this example. If we used a $10 million budget, the state would pay $6 million and the Manitowoc Public School District would pay $4 million. If in fact we reduce that $10 million budget to $8 million, the state is still going to pay 60%, right? But because they're paying 60%, they're going to give us less money. And so what we're going to see in that on year 2 of the levy will be likely an increase of about 70 cents. So on year 1, it'll go down probably $1.25. And on year 2, we'd likely see a 75-cent increase because the state is now going to withhold money from us because we didn't spend it. I know, and again, we talk about the funding formula, it doesn't make sense. So likely in years 2, 3, and 4, we would get back up to $7.80, even though we would have significant cuts to our programs. By the time we spend the money, if we prove the referendum, the state would then reimburse us the following year. So historically, what you would see is that we would have a referendum that would increase the levy and then drop. Back in 2018, we thought our levy would move up to $8.21. A lot of the levy has to do with the property value increases compared with the state property value increases. And so that is the challenge. Another question asked, is a tax levy set by the formula, hence the need of referendum in the first place? So Amy, great question. So we have some ability to set the levy, but the levy is basically set by a formula that the state provides us. It's based on the number, how much money you need, right? And the way the levy really works is it's based on the amount of property value. So again, I'll give you an example of the levy. If we had a $5 levy and your property value was $100,000, you would be paying then $500 to the levy. If the next year your property value went to $110,000, we still can only get $500 from you, so your levy is going to go down. So likely, rather than being a $5 levy, that levy would go to $4.89 or something like that. You multiply 49 times 110,000, you're likely going to get about that $500. That's how the levy works. So we have some ability to keep it in there. Where the money comes and goes is the state setting your equalized value. And it's really a complicated matter. But if you look on your tax bill, you'll see 2 different pieces, an equalized value and then your assessed value. And your assessed value typically stays the same. And the reason the equalized value is there is so one municipality doesn't pay a heavier burden than another. And it's just the way the state puts those pieces in. So yes, we do not have the ability to go back when we were in, so we've dropped the levy for the last 6 years. We can't just say we're going to set the levy. In order to raise the levy or go to referendum, it has to be approved by the public. Generally, the increase of the levy has to do with our state's ability to provide resources. The more property value increases, typically the lower the levy is. Those kind of match in addition to what we're spending. Again, I will communicate. I've got a draft document that I'll put on our website. And Amy, if you want some very specific pieces, if you send me an email, I'll send you the exact link to that. And it goes through a little bit more in detail about understanding the levy, the mill rate, your tax bill, equalized value, and fair market assessment. But it's really in detail, and I don't want to get too minutiae tonight. A question from Donald says, how much money have we saved since Act 10? Well, that's a good question. I don't know specifically. What I would tell you, Donald, is this. I'm going to say 2004. I'm looking at my colleague here trying to remember exactly what was the date. 2008? Act 10? It's been 10 years, so maybe it was even 2002. Maybe it is the anniversary. Anyway, so here's one thing that I know about Act 10. Across the state, not just in public schools, with the exception of our safety folks, it saved 7% of employees' salaries. So historically, prior to Act 10, employees received paid into a pension and their employer paid the pension. Act 10 eliminated that, so it reduced the income by 7%. So it reduced it to 7%. In addition to that, there was all kinds of other pieces. And again, I don't know that Act 10 was a money saver necessarily going in. It was trying to reduce some opportunities that teachers and other unions had in order to negotiate. And so what Act 10 really has done since 2011 is it has limited what the bargaining can happen. So it's hard to know exactly because the teachers and all employees, I guess, raises are now based on what our qualified economic is. So this year we anticipated, I think, a 1.21% increase. And historically, those would have been negotiated on what the district could pay or could afford. In terms of dollars, we could talk about 7% since 2011. I would say millions of dollars. And again, we have to decide, again, I would tell you that Act 10 had some possibilities that supported some pieces for the district. It also was really detrimental to a lot of things within our staffs and in our communities, I think, in terms of how much angst that both sides felt. We're still probably recovering from the support of that. So another question is why is the MPSD the only district in the area that has a referendum every 3 years? Well, example I gave you before when I told you about school districts, example, Howard Suamico has a referendum every 5 years. And so they ask for 5 years. Denmark has a referendum every 4 years. They ask every 4 years. We choose to ask for 3 years because that gives us the best ability to forecast out. I start forecasting out beyond 3 years, and really I'm guessing. I'm really guessing at what the needs of the district are and what the needs of our community are. And so as much as I'd like to say, hey, here's a referendum for 5, 7, 10 years of which we could go to the public, I'd really be guessing on the back end, and we really want to be as fiscally conservative, as accurate as we can about how much money we need and what the purpose of that money will be. The other reason is because the state funding formula doesn't provide us with the resources we need to maintain our programs. Again, I'll just reiterate one more time. We are one of the lowest bottom 8% in the state of spending. So even when the state does give us resources, they give the same amount of money if you're 386 or if you're number one. There are school districts in our region that are spending, $18,000, $20,000 per pupil compared to our 12. And they will always be able to spend that unless the formula changes. So it's challenging if you're at the bottom to get anywhere, right? And so you have to just keep maintaining what you have. But we're also trying to compete with other school districts who are spending $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 per pupil more than we are. And that's challenging in and of itself. So again, that's why we have to go back to referendum. When I would tell you that what the difference is likely the net tax levy in those other school districts are much higher than ours. And so they're paying for that because they started to pay for it back in 1994, and the state funding formula kept us at that level. So I'll pause there. I think I got all the questions that were in there. I don't know if there's any other questions that people have. I definitely will pause here for a little bit and allow you to put any other questions in, or if you want some additional information, feel free to send me an email. I'd be more than happy to respond back to you either via email or in person. If you have information that you'd like me to share to another organization or group, I do this on a regular basis, try to get as much information as I can out to our public so that they can be informed and make a qualified decision. My job is to make sure that you have all the information you need to answer that. And again, if there is more information that you're looking for, feel free to contact us. I will pause and be quiet here for a little while and just leave the chat open, let's say till about 7:07. And if there's anything else you'd like me to answer, you can put it in there. Otherwise, I will take those questions and put them in a more organized manner. Again, I want to say thank you so much for spending time with me tonight. It is absolutely my privilege to share with you information regarding the Manitowoc Public School District. And again, if you have any other questions or if there's anything else you want from me, feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to connect with you. Be well, and I will see you around. Okay, I see a couple questions in there, so I'm just going to try to respond to those. Again, thank you so much for your questions. Um, so one question was, what actions have been done to reduce or eliminate the need of referendum by MPSD? Third one, no one site. I would tell you that I am concerned, and I continue to be concerned about the way that school districts in the state, including Manitowoc, have to fund themselves. And a referendum is the model that we're using right now, and I hope that this isn't a forever model, but it looks like it's for the future model right now. What I would tell you is that part of our grade alignment, as you recall, reducing our footprint and organizing our ninth graders, sixth graders, and kindergartners in our neighborhood schools was the first of a overarching scope to reduce. That allowed us to reduce the administration and staff at one building. So we reduced one building and saved, again, not just 1 year, but for the long haul. I think we used $375,000 in staffing for that. We've also done a number of other program reductions. Some of that has to do with the staff we have. So every year we look at how many staff we have and we make reductions. So all of our schools have had some staffing reductions specifically based on the enrollment that we've had within our district. We have frozen our budgets for supplies. That's been going on for the last 3 years, and we've reduced that. We've changed health insurance companies in order to try to maintain and reduce our expenses with health insurance. We have a $12 million self-funded health insurance, so that's something that is always ongoing. And we're actually doing our best right now to do some additional savings in energy efficiencies, and we're working hard in order to do that. So those are some things. I mean, in addition to staff reductions and elimination of roles, reducing our footprint within the district, and changing things that we can change in order to support that. Be just a few things that come right off the top of my head. Somebody wants to know about graduation to be planned outside this year. Right now, it's our plan to have an outdoor graduation. I am sure that there will be some protocols and things that will make it look a little bit different than we've had in the past. Some of that will determine what the county is going to allow us to do. But I would tell you right now, our plans to have an outdoor graduation. And I too very much enjoy that graduation, and maybe because we didn't have the same opportunity, we'll have an even better one than we've had in the past. So the 2015 referendum was for 2 million, 3.5, now 4.3. Will it always increase? You know, the increase is based on the reduction that the state has given us based on our per pupil allocation. The other things to note, so the answer is probably, but I mean, again, in 2015, we didn't levy to the max and gave some money back. I say gave it back. We just didn't levy to the max to reduce the tax levy. So I will assure you that if the district is in a position where we don't need all the money that we have based on other resources that we gain, we will not levy to the max. So the question is, will it always increase? Well, I guess it depends on what our other revenue sources are and how the state funding formula works. And always is, I would say, no, it's not always, but it potentially could. I guess it depends on where that is. Other questions coming in here. Thank you again for your questions here. How are we going to use the referendum to improve our educational ranking in the state or just maintaining current performance? I would tell you that my job, and I hope you would agree with me, that our job is not to teach and rank other versus other school districts, to do the best we can with the kids we have. And again, when you look at what we offer our kids and what we want to do, if we provide outstanding teachers, right? We know that the number one influencer on our individual students' academic achievement is a great teacher. And we have great teachers, and we want to continue to provide the resources for them to learn, grow, and improve. So that's a big factor in improving, whatever you want to call a performance. But there's lots of different measures that we have within school performance. And what I would tell you about that is there's a lot of things that I would give you as an explanation. Some school districts will tout their ACT score. I would tell you that one thing that Manitowoc might want to tout is the ability of how many students at the Manitowoc Public School District who, when they enter our UW system, are required to take entry-level courses, right? And so when you look at Manitowoc, in Manitowoc, we're in the top 25 percentile of the state of students who do not need to take remedial courses. There are other institutions, some of them that are in Manitowoc that are private, that have almost 60% of their students who are going to college and taking 095, as we call those, less than core academic courses. So again, I guess it depends on the mechanism we're using. We do know that if you use a mechanism that is purely student standardized test, the correlation between poverty and standardized test is not effective, right? We will know that the poorest schools will be at the bottom and our richest schools will be at the top. If you want to compare us that way, then you know that our school district is 50% free and reduced. Manitowoc School District ranks 16th in title allocations, which means that we have the 16th most poverty students, student count-wise, in the state of Wisconsin, right? Manitowoc's about 30th in the state in enrollment. So there are lots of factors when we talk specifically about what we want. Personally, I think there are great opportunities for us to improve, and we will improve, but we want kids to be healthy, wealthy, obviously in the end wealthy. We want to be healthy, productive, right? And we want them to maintain opportunities for engagement post high school. We want them to be either ready to work, we want them to be ready for a career, we want them to be ready for the military, ready for a 2-year school or a 4-year school. And that's our focus, trying to provide that. Again, by using those referendum dollars, we'll be able to maintain the programs that we have and improve on those. Without the referendum dollars, those are the kind of things that are going to be reduced. Is a $12 million health part of the 16.1 or separate? Okay, so yeah, so our health insurance becomes part of so wages, salaries, and benefits. Within that would be the health insurance. Absolutely, it calls our salaries. It would be what we pay for Social Security, what we pay for life insurance, all those benefits that employers are having to pay for. So it's all part of the educator expense. And yes, one of the things that I would tell you is that the Manitowoc Public School District is a self-funded school district, so we pay the claims. So the healthier we are, the less cost we spend on insurance, and the less healthy we are, the more injuries and illness we have, the higher our expenses go. So we are absolutely in the business of healthy, productive employees, because that saves us money and provides us with the opportunity to continue to provide a robust health care package. Just pausing here a little bit to see, appreciate. Oh, did I answer? I'm just looking here. Maybe I skipped one. I think I answered all of these questions here. Thank you. I'll pause here, just kind of string through. Like I said, I'm not on your page. I'm on a little bit different one, but I do appreciate, again, your opportunities, and happy to answer questions. All right. Well, with that, I will take one more pause here. I'll wait till 7:15. And the last time I gave you a warning, we put a bunch of questions in there, but I am happy to stay as long as needed, and appreciate everybody staying with us and listening to the presentation. Again, if you have questions, there is on the website, you can even put in the question and answer it. It'll go to me, and I'll be able to respond to you. So again, thank you so much for your time. Very much appreciate it. Definitely want to shout out to Jessica Dupre and Kay Bilkey, who have behind the scenes helped supported me. So as you know, any kind of presentation is not just one person. So thank you. Very grateful for your support. So I hope you all have a great evening, and look forward to continued communications. Next board meeting is Tuesday at noon. So you're happy to watch it streaming, or we also put the last couple board meetings up to watch. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to give me a call. Be well, and I will